Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Silvates podcast. Today, I have Taydo who's an osteopath, joining me today, and we're going to be talking about life beyond osteopathy. And that's what I'm really excited to hear about Taydo's experience and his journey. So, welcome,
Yeah.
Taydo. Thank you for joining me today.
Hey, Sylvan, thank you for having me. Hello,
Yeah.
everyone. I hope this helps as well. We can have an interesting talk about where we're at and where we're going, really.
Absolutely. So we met whilst we were both students at BCom. I think you must have been in your fourth year when I was in my first.
Right. Yeah, I think it was. Yeah.
So
So I
like,
graduated in 2016.
yeah. So
Yeah.
you sort of like on the way out when I was slowly emerging into this crazy world.
Oh, yes. And I was thinking, oh, look what the first years have got themselves into.
Yeah, thanks for the heads up.
No, it's great. I do remember seeing you around a lot. I remember you doing a lot of Pilates and posting, and I was following your posts as well. I was like
Oh,
stealing a couple of
thanks.
moves from you.
Well, equally, you're pretty good at social media because you're a dancer.
I am indeed. Yes.
Yeah.
Been dancing for a while now,
Yeah, and I
and it's
want
just
to
sort of
ask
been.
you more about that a bit later and how
Yeah, sure.
sort of that sort of intertwined into your practice and where you're at now, because some of the posts you have, you're really good.
Stop it. No.
No, but like you've gone to competition and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So yeah, we'll talk about that more whenever that topic comes up. But
perfect. I'm going to mentally make a mental note for you. So, so you graduated in 2016.
yeah,
What was your experience at BCom like? So, if someone's not familiar with the acronym, it's the British College of Osteopathic Medicine.
medicine, such a mouthful. So starting in 2012, basically my mindset was I went straight from A levels into university. To be fair, I didn't know what I really wanted to do. All I knew is I wanted to help people, and I'm into sports. So my friend at the time, he went to Surrey Nescott College of Technology, which also offers osteopathy. I would just say it's not the greatest institution. So after applying there, I then realized, oh, I'm making probably a big mistake by applying here. So then I went to BCom, because BCom, as well as the other universities in London, have the biggest reputation for osteopathy. And I thought, you know what, let's just dive straight into this and see what happens, because it seems like a really interesting course. If you really want to know about the neuromusculoskeletal system and how to deal with it in terms of your knowledge and what you can do, then osteopathy is a really good course to do. Throughout the 4 years, I would say it was pretty tough. I mean, anyone who did the course can agree with it as well, right? So,
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm pretty sure like the first 2 years was on par, if not harder than medical school, right? Because I remember having a few medical students, medical friends who were doing it, and they were saying it was not as bad as what we were doing, to be fair.
Why do you think that is then?
It's interesting. I think it's just the syllabus and the way they just chuck everything at you. I mean, it's good because healthcare and the whole sector of healthcare is massive, right? When you look at the allopathic medicine route, like the normal medical route, there's so many different specialities just for the human body, right? So what we're trying to do all of that at the same time. And it is quite overwhelming sometimes, but the more I work in this field, the more I realize, we don't have to be a Superman at everything. There's, limits to our knowledge, and it's about accepting that as well. But otherwise, I did really find the experience fun. It was good and challenging. When you got the grade you wanted that you worked for, there's always a good, feeling towards that
Tell
as
me
well.
what that feeling's like. I'm
So
joking.
I was going to tell you. But yeah, I mean, I was privileged enough to not fail anything because I always try to work hard. But still, my dissertation, that was when mentally I was deteriorating and I was feeling like really down on the dumps. But that's where your support group comes in. Talk to your friends, talk to your families, and you'll find a way out. Because I wanted to, as bad as it sounds, when it got to the dissertation, my mindset was, can I swear? Yeah. I was like, fuck it.
Absolutely. Go for it.
I was thinking, fuck this, man. I'm just going to fail and do it next year. And in my mind, in that mindset, it felt okay. But when I was saying it to other people, they were like, what? No, you can't do that. You can't fail. You've gone through almost 4 years already. You can't. Yeah, that's just the struggles, or inevitable struggles of university. But it's all about how we cope with the stress, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I'm glad your friends or whoever you spoke to, helped you through that period, because I can attest to everyone I know going through that as well. And if it wasn't
Right.
for the friends at BCom and
Absolutely.
family, I'm surprised you would have come back, because I probably wouldn't have. Like if I failed something and I had to retake a whole year, and this is, huge respect to people who have repeated a year, I don't think I would have the mental capacity to come back and redo that year.
Yeah, it's a hard knock on the ground, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's just thinking like, oh, this stuff, and just push through kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so you graduate from BCom.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And what happens after BCom for you?
So straight after BCom, I applied for the graduate clinic inside BCom, which was really cool because, the whole time we were getting supervised. And the next thing I know, I'm in the same room, but without any support. And actually, it was a really valuable transitional period for me because, it helped build my confidence up, helped me realize, well, I don't need to be so anxious without anyone in the room, and it'll be okay, So I worked there for about a year and a half. And in this time period, after about a year and a half, one of my friends, actually, this is where we can link up the dance thing, actually. One of my friends asked me or told me about this really cool opportunity to compete in America. So it's all I had to do was audition with this East London-based dance group called Unity. Crazy audition. I had to audition like 6 hours, 2 times. So tough.
Wow.
But I managed to get in, and I just, again, threw myself in the deep end. So uncomfortable doing it, but I thought, you know what, this will be worth it, especially because my friend was going as well. So I ended up getting accepted into auditions, trained for a good 6 months. I was only working part-time in the graduate clinic at this time, more focusing on the dance. And yes, went to America, had a great time. I mean, we didn't win. Obviously, there's like 50, 60 countries competing in the same place and they're all top level. And, we were just there to have fun, really, but really great experience.
And what's that like as a dancer, and having this huge background in, biomechanics and anatomy and physiology? Did that change how you approached sort of like your training, or the way did you treat anyone else?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, Sylvan. So it actually has benefited me in a couple of ways, where osteopathy benefited my dance and my dance benefited my osteopathy. So how my osteopathy benefited the dance was the fact that, again, I knew the biomechanics, I knew a quality of movement and everything, and I tried to implement that in the way I move. But also people knew that as an osteopath, there's not many of us. There's like 5,300 and something as of like last year or something. So whenever I say osteopath, they're like, oh, what's that? So, oh yeah, I deal with, injuries, bad backs, etc. And I was always the guy in the team where everyone, came up to. And it got so mad to the point where in the end I had to charge them, even though they were my teammates. I was
Good
like,
for
guys,
you.
I had to charge them. But it was really good. I mean, a lot of the times I realize in terms of manual therapy, there's a certain limit to how effective it is. I realize what gets the most results in a treatment is if you come across as confident, and so in a way that reassures them and comforts them and gets them out of this mindset everything's going to get worse, and that mindset of catastrophizing. So once they're out of that mindset and they're on that positive mindset, once you give them advice and exercise prescription, maybe a rub here and there just to reassure them. That is the most effective form of treatment for any manual therapist, I think. Obviously rehab as well if needed. But yeah, it made me realize over time, the more I was doing manual therapy, the more I was like, how effective is this compared to all of the other things I'm doing? And how unique is it? So one of the things for me, I came out of university, graduate in osteopath thinking, oh yeah, I'm the shit. You know, there's only 5,000 of us. This is a great niche. And then basically after the graduate clinic, after America, I moved to a central London clinic where they were doing a lot of multidisciplinary treatments. So acupuncture, sports therapy, physio, osteo, and I had the privilege of actually working with all of these people. And that's where I realized, damn, like what I'm doing isn't really that unique. A sports therapist can do anything I'm doing just as well, right? So that's the moment where I had to let go of my ego as an osteopath, you know. I don't think there's any place for ego in this sort of healthcare sector because it's so massive. Everything we know, do we really know? Is it what we really know? Is it going to change in 10 years?
Probably. Like there'll probably be a new paradigm shift. So now everything's like biopsychosocial model. What's it going to be like in a couple of years' time? Who knows?
Exactly. So all the teachings in BCom, you know how it was all quite separated, you know, psychology here, biochemistry there. Afterwards, after I graduated, after I'm in practice, then I realized, oh, now I realize why they're teaching this.
But that's such an important thing because I can attest to that. Everything's so segmented and you can't make those links whilst you're studying because you've got 17 other things and a Viva in 2 weeks.
Exactly.
And, you know, you've got a Form A coming and you can't mess that up because then it affects everything else.
Yes, exactly.
So it's interesting. And you're not the
crazy.
first person to say, like, I'm going to just sit with everything after I finish and actually learn it.
Right. That's it. So is it okay if I ask you questions as well? I'm just curious what you're doing as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So what are you doing at the moment, Sylvan?
So I work in the NHS as an osteopath. So I'm there full time and I'm also teaching Pilates. So with everything going on, that's online. But and I also lecture now. So I lecture at BCom.
Oh, amazing. What are you doing?
Yeah. So I teach the psychology syllabus as well.
Amazing. That's awesome,
which is why when you said, you know, the whole psychology element came into play afterwards, I'm like, I absolutely agreed. And for me, I want to bring the osteopathy into the psychology a lot sooner. And that's the whole benefit of having me there, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is you know, we can apply like reinforcement principles to exercise adherence and why aren't your patients doing their exercises? How are you bringing it across? And so that's the stuff that really gets me sort of going.
Oh, that's amazing. I'm so glad to hear you're doing well for yourself. In terms of the NHS, what role do you have in the NHS? What
so I'm an osteopath.
Yeah.
Based in the physiotherapy department.
Oh, okay.
So it's a little different for them as well, because it's the first time they've had an osteopath in the department. So it's been a really interesting sort of learning curve for both of us. But now with COVID and everything sort of stalled.
Okay.
But I do have a question for you, because you talked about the grad clinic. But I wanted to ask you, what were your expectations sort of when you were graduating versus when you started working?
Oh, in terms of expectations, it's an interesting one because I was just trying to trust everything I learnt and go in there thinking, you know, just use whatever I know to help this person. My initial expectation was thinking I can fix everything or give advice or try to diagnose everything. Then I quickly realized, okay, life is more complex than that. You know, patients are more complex than that. Sometimes you can't just get the answer like that. You know, especially when we're trying to transition from, you know, learning and going out of the room, taking time to discuss it, to real life, where it's like you don't really have time to discuss it. yeah, no, it was an interesting experience for me in the end,
Yeah.
especially grad clinic.
Yeah, and what did you get out of having that multidisciplinary approach? You mentioned like what we
Yeah,
do is not necessarily unique, although so what did you actually get from them? What did you learn from the other
yeah.
practitioners?
So techniques, so different ways of doing mobilizations, and well, adjustments. We were usually the ones teaching them.
Yeah.
I did work in a chiropractic clinic as well, actually. So the chiropractor did teach me a lot of adjustments as well, because they have those are funky ways of doing it. Yeah, I would say it's more of a case of even business wise as well, you know, how to retain patients or how to attract new patients. As osteopathic students, unfortunately, we don't really delve into that too much. You have to do your own reading. And what I realized is that chiropractors, they actually do delve into that during school, right? Which is why they're so much more popular, even though what they're doing might not necessarily be as much better, right? On another tangent, what I have realized is that one question that you probably get asked quite a lot is, what's the difference between a physio and osteo? Or what's the difference between osteo and chiro? And I always say, okay, if you try to look at the differences, it's quite hard because there's actually more similarities than differences, all right? If you were to get the top physio, top osteo, and top chiro, they're probably doing the same thing. So exercise, rehabilitation, nutritional advice, you know, aware of the psychology of the person. And that's the realism of it. I think if there was a way to combine all of these professions and make it one super big profession, that would be amazing. But I don't think that will happen anytime soon.
No, I mean we have enough governing bodies for that.
Yeah.
as interesting as that may be. But so what did you get out of grad clinic and why did you do grad clinic straight after graduating?
So main reason was it was convenient, right? Because I was already used to the environment and there was a lot of anxiety going to a new place, right? So this was just a nice transitionary period to get that. Plus, I did grad clinic because, well, I just graduated. You know, I thought I need something guaranteed where I know I'll get accepted because they know me, right? And just went from there. Really, there were a lot of difficult times, but there was a lot of gratifying times as well. You know, but that having Gemma there as well, just to discuss everything, was really valuable too.
Yeah. And how important do you think it is for like a new graduate to have some mentoring or someone that they can contact regarding like those difficult cases?
Yeah, definitely. So important. Even if your mentor is not an osteopath or some other healthcare professional, it's so important to have someone there as support. As they say, even the governing bodies, they don't like osteopaths to be alone, right? They want us to connect to others as well. And there's a really cool thing. I believe it's on the GEOSC website or the IO website where they have the pillars thing where you can, if you don't have any, if you're unsure of a certain scenario, you can post it on there on the forum and then people will just help you out.
See, I did not know that existed.
Okay. Yeah, you search up online, pillars.
Okay, great. And so, you know, you do the grad clinic, you compete in America. You talked earlier about the osteopathy informing your dance, but how did your dance inform the osteopathy?
Right, that's a good one. It's a good one. So it's when we do treatment, it's all based on touch and soft, right? So really good example, obvious example is if your patient is laying on the table and you go to, let's say, do some harmonics. Harmonics is where, you know, we rock back and forth just to help mobilize the area. So I can either go, so they say this is their body. I can either just go gently and do this, or I can go, right? So that's so obvious, but sometimes we have to be conscious of it to avoid it. And dance really helped me be conscious of my movement. So rather than even doing the movement like this, I can slow it down and be more smooth with it, or, you know, different dynamics. So I judge a dancer based on their consciousness of dynamics of movement, you know. So rather than just doing one certain energy, you sort of change it up and maybe slow-mo or staccato or something like that. But I guess that's how dance informed my osteopathy.
That's really interesting. Did you ever have Sue as a
Sue,
tutor?
yeah, she's
That
amazing.
reminds me so much of Sue, because when, like, everyone, so Sue, I can't remember her last name, she's going to kill me.
Sue
Cook, thank you. When she taught us ST, and then I think we didn't have it for clinic, but I think you did. When she would ask for a model, everyone would jump because her touch was so light, but yet so
Right.
effective.
Yeah, she studied classical osteopathy as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, no wonder.
Yeah. And so, you know, were you always a dancer, or did you get into it later?
So I got into it before university.
Okay.
I actually originally got into contemporary dance through A-level and like GCSEs. And then I quickly realized I like dance more as a social thing. And that's where the hip hop came in, you know. As you know, there's the whole hip hop culture. And then I found some place in central London at Trocadero, which is underground Piccadilly Circus, where it was a whole dance community. And that's just where I got into it, really. And just went from there. But at the moment, I would say I'm quite on a chilled level. There was a crossroad where I had to take, right? There's my friends who wants to be professional dancers and make it to the top. And there's me, it was like, oh, you know, I still love healthcare. I still want to go in this route. So it was either one or the other, because, you know, it takes a lot of time and dedication to build one or the other. Right.
Yeah, and I imagine it's a stress on your body as well.
Oh, yeah. Few stresses here and there. Definitely had to get my fair few share of treatments myself as well.
And interesting that you talk about this sort of this parallel and this difference of journeys, because you did that post BCom as well. So tell me about what you're doing at the moment.
Yes. So essentially what I have decided is to relegate my position as an osteopath. All right. Just based on my personal circumstances, I feel like I have lost a little bit of passion for it. I mean, I still respect the profession. I respect everyone inside it. It's just me personally, where I felt like, do I really want to have to keep on building and building? And let's say if I want to move countries, I have to start again. You know, that was a big issue in my head. So I realized one of my mantras or values is to give back, is to use my knowledge of, you know, anatomy, physics, whatever, and help others, right? And I could do that. I could continue doing that as a radiographer. So that's why I've chosen diagnostic radiography. And there's a part of it where there's a certainty to it, right? So patient comes in, you're told what area to scan, you scan it, thank you, bye. You know what I mean? As brutal as that sounds, but osteopathy is a lot more diverse, open, right? Sometimes we think, okay, is this working? We'll have to see based on your next visit, etc. So there's the element of uncertainty, which gave me anxiety.
Absolutely. So what made you decide to go into diagnostic radiography specifically?
Yeah. So I actually looked at the list of all the allied health professionals. So I actually went through all of them, thinking what sparks inside me. You know, I looked at physio, I looked at occupational health, etc. I chose diagnostic radiography because I just remember one of the lecturers teaching X-rays, MRIs, and I found it so cool. Like one of the coolest, especially seeing the images of inside us. You know, one of the coolest modules that we did, and figured, you know what? If I went through 4 years of hardcore study in BCom, you know what? An extra 3 years, I'm just going to smash it, put my head down, and just do it, and just work my way towards the top. You know, I want to be a consultant radiographer, like just managing the department. and everything. So that'll be awesome.
That's amazing. So you've just started, you're in the first year of your degree, is that correct?
I am indeed. Yep,
That's really exciting. And is it
it
what you
is.
expected it to be? I know it's only like what, a couple of weeks in.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I mean, it's all just the basics, like introduction to the human body, introduction to physics or radiation. So it's just taking it slowly at the moment, really. But it's a weird one because like I'm in my apartment now. I used to live back at home with like 9 other people. So now I'm in my own apartment by myself. I just find myself like standing around like, what do I do now? But it's great because I have a lot more focus, so I'm just one of them ones.
and what's it like for you, having been a student, done this degree, worked out there in the real world, paid
Yeah.
taxes, all of that sucky stuff,
Mhm.
and then gone back to being a student again?
Oh, you know what? I was actually discussing this with a few of my friends. I was saying, it's great being an adult. There's a lot of flexibility. When you come home from work, there's nothing else to do, right? That was the best part. But especially the last couple of months with COVID, my finances have been sort of all over the place. I've been surviving on the self-employment scheme, the grant, which I'm lucky enough because I've been working for the last 3-4 years. But I felt sorry for all the new graduates who are self-employed, who did not have this history of all this grant money to come. And I was like, oh, that sucks for them. But even still, I was, kind of struggling on that.
So what's it like coming back and being a student again? Because it's a
Yeah,
complete shift. Like so you have,
yeah,
you used
yeah,
to have all this time in the evenings to do whatever you wanted, dance, whatever. And now how has that mindset shifted back for
yeah.
you?
I think I feel less stress. Definitely. Let me show you this cup I bought especially. I'm an adult-ish now.
That is brilliant. That's pretty much how I feel most of the time.
Yeah. I mean, as serious as the adult life is, what I've come to realize recently is that we shouldn't take life too seriously. We should be kids when we can, like you said. Adult-ish is the way. I mean, really and truly, we're just a speck of dust in this universe, isn't it? And if the Earth is a speck of dust, then we are just a grain of, like, smaller than a bacterial cell. So again, I come back to the whole point of this big ego where, like, a lot of us naturally have, oh, we're so important. Really and truly, yes, we are important to those around us. But the best way to, I think, be remembered is to give back,
Yeah.
and just keep a positive mindset, really.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm actually less stressed, I would say, being a student, because I've been through it already, and it's a nice balance, really.
Yeah. And one thing you said earlier was, about money, especially when you graduate. And this is something that I've wanted to talk to somebody about on here.
Yeah.
So, you graduate and you have all these expectations of having full lists and, you're going to earn all this money because you've been poor for 4 years, essentially.
Right.
I mean, not really, but hey. And then it doesn't automatically happen that way.
You're right.
And so why do you think the money doesn't follow as you expect it to?
That's the interesting one, actually. I mean, it really is dependent on your drive to attract these new patients. It's dependent on the place that you like. Can you see yourself staying in this place and building a list? I had that trouble. I didn't really want to stay in a graduate clinic for very long. A year was good for me. Even in a central London clinic, having to be there for 7:30 in the morning, and my boss, imagine he's just looking at me on the stairs like, oh, like 7, I got there like 7:28. He was like, oh, 2 minutes earlier. He's just looking at me. I was like, you know what? I can't be bothered to be a part of this army camp.
Yeah. And it's tough, especially in central London. I mean, it's tough everywhere, but I can imagine.
Yeah.
I mean, I worked in a gym in central London where, I had to wake up at 5 because I had to be at the gym by 7.
There you go. Yeah,
And
that's
it's a corporate setting, and it's numbers driven. It was a lovely place to work. Don't get me wrong, I really enjoyed it.
that's
But
great.
it's
Yeah,
numbers driven at the end of the day because it's a corporation.
yeah. That's the thing, isn't it? So it's,
Yeah.
it's always a fine balance of numbers and money and finance in terms of businesses and patient care and patient focused care. Really, that is one of the issues I found in my chiropractic clinic that I worked in. I'm not going to name any names.
No, we don't need to know.
But
We can just look you up on LinkedIn. It's all good.
yeah, I mean, one scenario that you fellow graduates might come across is, let me explain my scenario. So a patient came in with sciatica, 43 years old. She wasn't exercising much because of the pain. And essentially, I diagnosed her, treated her, and she actually got pain-free within 2 sessions, amazingly, right? She came back, she said, I can exercise now. I went to the gym today, it was fine. I was like, wow, amazing. No worries. My mantra that I follow is, if it's not broke, don't fix it. The most effective thing you can do right now is keep on exercising and keep that positive mindset. So I let her go. I only saw her for 5 minutes. Personally, I didn't actually charge her. Maybe, I don't know, it was a weird one. So I didn't feel the need to charge her when I didn't do anything, right? Then my boss comes up to me, he's like, Taydo, what you did was wrong. You shouldn't have done that. I'm sure like you should have kept her as much as you could. I'm sure, everyone's got tight calves. You should have just massaged her calf. And in this moment in time, I was like, oh, I can't because that's just, she doesn't need it, So that was my conundrum, really. And that's where I sort of lost passion in terms of, trying to get that balance of patient-focused care and money at the same time.
Yeah.
But me, I just want to focus on the patients, and that's it.
Yeah, it's really interesting because one of the very first osteo jobs I got was in a osteopathic clinic, and saw this patient. Saw a patient a couple of times, and the last one didn't really need treatment, just sat with them like you did for a few minutes, maybe 5-10 minutes. Everything was fine. And I was like, okay, you're good. Off you go.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
I was really lucky because the clinic I was at was very supportive. And so I went to reception. I'm like, do not charge. And off you went.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So I recognize sort of there's this ethical sort of boundary where you're like, I didn't do anything. I'm not going to charge you. You can go. Whereas in your situation, it's very numbers driven, and your supervisor, your manager was like, you should have done some treatment to get, to charge. Whereas I was lucky because the principal osteo was like, okay, cool, they didn't need it. They can go. Right. They will come back if they ever need treatment.
That's it, bro. That's the one. If they need it.
Because they didn't feel ripped off.
Yeah. And I imagine I went to a seminar, right? So there is a company, chiropractic and physiotherapy company called Hausa. They operate like in Maidenhead and everything. Really big clinics. There's like 5 or 6 of them. And I went to one of the CEO's seminars, and he was like, basically baseline for all the patients is we want to get them on a 24 treatment plan, no matter what their issue is. I'm like, why? Like, even my boss in the chiropractic clinic was trying to get me to sell these 24 treatment plans, but I couldn't because there was no passion in it. There was no reason, because they didn't need it. And there was a conundrum where I was like, okay, this guy clearly knows what he's talking about because he brings in over £5 million a year, his clinics, right? But it's his system, which I can't agree with, where everyone should be on a 24 treatment plan. Why? So yeah, that's also something I had to consider as well. If you want to be successful, you have to sacrifice. I don't know if you have to, you don't have to, but more than likely, you're going to have to think about sacrificing patient-focused care,
Yeah. And so one of the things you talked about earlier was sort of you learned how to build a patient list. And it sounds like, this really helped shape that thinking. So how were you able to build a patient list, maybe in other clinics or other places you worked at? What techniques did you use? What strategies did you use?
Absolutely. Oh, there's so many. So We should never, well, elephant in the room is word of mouth. They always say word of mouth is one of the best marketing tools. So I always gave cards, to people, like free consultation cards for family members if they booked in. And that would be a good incentive to tell someone about it. All right. Other one would be, Facebook. Facebook, for our generation, it's so dead, right? We don't really use Facebook that much, but people in their 40s, 50s, etc., they love it. they don't know anything else, right? So Facebook's still really relevant and important for that kind of demographic. Obviously, Twitter, Instagram, the few of the videos you've seen as well has really helped too. But yeah, I would say once you get them in or attract new patients, a website is really important as well, right? Because people will judge you based on a website, or if you're legit, surely you have a website, sort of thing. I haven't made my own website yet because I was thinking of this transitional period into radiography, so I don't need to just yet. But I actually want to do maybe sports massage or deep tissue when I'm allowed to part-time. I mean, I'll still be able to use my osteopathy skills, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so thinking of social media then, like we always think like you've got to really push social media and, people are there people want this information. They want to receive this information. And one of the conversations I was having with a friend of mine who's an osteo, I was like, well, I'm posting all this stuff on Instagram, yeah? But everyone who's liking the posts or viewing the stories are other osteopaths. What's the point in that?
That's interesting, isn't it? I mean, that's good though, because the followers of the osteopath can see what they liked, right? So they have an opportunity to click on that profile as well. Yeah, it's an interesting one because that'll gradually build up. You can ask your current patients to follow you on Instagram, and then you release a couple of stories here and there, and then they might share that to their friend or something.
Yeah.
But I think what's really valuable on social media is if you post a video or photograph, but then post a link directing them to booking a treatment or inquiring about a treatment as well. Otherwise, they'll be just like, just keep on scrolling.
Absolutely. And so I think there's definitely a place in advertising through social media, but I think you need to really look at it and look at your target demographic, like you said, like maybe post on Facebook for a certain demographic and Instagram for a younger demographic, maybe, because they're going to be more active
Absolutely
there.
Yeah.
And it's about doing it smartly, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I know like one osteopath, I don't know if you've come across Elite Osteo on Instagram, but he basically does all this marketing through Instagram, and he's really popular. He does like home visits, charges like 150 above for them as well, and busy, right? So you can do it through Instagram, just Instagram, if you wanted to.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to start following him now. But I think what I was really excited about your story was that, you obviously did this degree, you worked in the industry. It's not like you didn't do it. And you found, maybe this isn't for me and maybe this isn't for me right now. So that must have taken like a lot of courage then to go back and be like, okay, what is going to make me passionate? What is going to make me more interested in studying again? Because it's another 3 years of your life. Let's be honest. It's not like, it's not like a 3-month, diploma or something.
And extra added debt from student finance. That's all of that I had to consider, man. But yeah, it got to the point, basically during COVID times, I wasn't working that much. I was maybe seeing like 2-3 patients in a week, right? Because my parents were also concerned about me coming back to the house and potentially, because I had my grandma there as well, right?
It's just it's such an important story to tell, because I'm sure that there are other people either watching or listening that have had similar thoughts and either done what you've done or conversely, been too scared to make that leap. Because
right.
I know I've definitely had those thoughts, and I'm only a year, maybe 2 years out from graduating. And I thought, is this something that I want to be doing for the rest of my life? I don't know that.
Yeah, I mean, that's natural as well. Yeah, it's natural to question it, right, when we're going through hard times. My turning point really was when I quit that chiropractic clinic, did my own home visits. But when I was doing the home visits, I asked myself, why am I only seeing 2 or 3 patients? And I figured it's because I sort of lost passion to try to build as much as I can. Then I realized, well, I'm just sitting at home doing nothing with myself right now. And, I'm not mentally in a good place. So I thought, you know what, let's just do something about it. I spent the whole day on my laptop just researching loads of different things. And yeah, in the end, I thought, fuck it, let's just go for it. Like this course here, what I'm doing now builds a spark in me, and I can see myself going to the top. And yeah,
I think that's amazing. Really. And for those people who sort of are going through that sort of transition and, are wanting to still genuinely do osteopathy, but are sort of looking at other things, what would you say was the most helpful for you? Was it to do both at the same time to make that clean break for yourself?
For those who are still wanting to do osteopathy, but still thinking about the thoughts of quitting, are you saying?
Yeah, or maybe trying something else that might sustain them for the rest of their life.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I would say it's always good to have your options open, right? So if you have the time, why not do both? Again, if it's too much, like I was listening to your interview with Beth, and she was mentioning the burnouts that she got from working that crazy hours. I've done that before as well, right? I had to work from like 8 to 9 p.m. And yeah, I agree. It burns you out. And sometimes you just need that break to reevaluate if it's really what you want to do. The osteopaths will always have a place in society because, again, we're like primary contact healthcare professionals. And a lot of people come to us for their initial aches and pains, right? So if we can give them the correct advice, correct direction, that is so valuable. So don't ever forget that, guys, if you are struggling. Just find it in yourself, question yourself, do you still have that spark? Do you still have that passion to, build? And no matter how tired you get, you love it. It's a hard one, isn't it? But it's all about self-reflection, really.
Yeah, and especially when you look at sort of other people's profiles on social media and everyone's just loving life and loving a Monday morning. And I'm sat here thinking, I just want to go back to sleep right now. I don't want to go into work on Monday morning. I'm tired. I didn't sleep. I did I had 12 patients the night before.
Exactly. The Monday blues, eh?
Yeah. So I think it's a really important conversation to be having and putting out there in the osteopathic community and just anyone listening, really, that, there are options. There are always other options.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, looking back on it, actually, I went into osteopathy not even researching all of the other physical therapy professions. I didn't research sports therapy. I didn't research physiotherapy, right? And I regret that. I do, because you need to look at your options, right? Especially if it's all very similar, it's an interesting one because Claire Slater, who's an osteopath, previously a physio, I asked her, oh, should I do a physio degree? She was like, no, don't do it. And simply because you don't have as much flexibility, right? But I personally like the styles of physios where it's more rehabilitation, advice-based, as opposed to pure manual therapy. Is an interesting one, right? Because when a new patient books for osteopathy, they have this big expectation where you have to touch them, right? If you don't touch them, they're going to be so pissed. And that's where we, as the practitioner, have to tell them, like, set the expectations. Manual therapy is this effective. However, it might only last a couple of days. You have to do some rehab on top of that, etc., etc. It's never a magic bullet. And when you see those chiropractor videos on YouTube, and they exaggerate the hell out of it, trying to make it as if it's a magic bullet, it infuriates me.
I think we've all seen very similar videos about that.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I interviewed an osteopath earlier in the series called Sebastian Hicks. And we
Okay.
talked about sort of couch-based interventions to then loading tissue, either standing or, through rehab, and getting them off the couch and getting those
Exactly,
tissues
yeah.
loaded. And it's that transition that I'm really fascinated by.
Right.
To the point where I wanted to do a rehab master's at is it St. Mary? I think it was at St. Mary's, and then everything happened and I couldn't get funding. So it was a big old that's just not going to happen right now. But that's where I'm going, and that's where I'm interested in.
That sounds really good. I mean, the fact that you do Pilates as well, such a good integration of things, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely use it as a fallback because that's the rehab I know. I'm not a strength and conditioning coach. I'm not a personal trainer. But I know Pilates really well. So everything I give is very Pilates based.
Right.
Which sucks if you don't like Pilates, but hey.
It helps, right? So suck it up, guys.
Yeah. So having that dance background then, did that inform how you treated other dancers and what style they used, how that strained or stressed certain parts of the body?
Yeah, definitely. It definitely helps in terms of just giving advice and knowledge, right? So there's a type of hip hop called crump, right? I don't know if you guys come across it, but crump, what they do, they use a lot of arm motions, and it's basically a lot of punches. And one of the moves is called I think it's called a snatch, where it's like this, right? But you can see what happens. There's that internal rotation of the arm while the arm is abducted already. And that causes so much stress on the supraspinatus tendon. But not a lot of people know that, especially one of my friends who was doing crump, and he was like, oh, I'm getting really bad shoulder pain. I'm like, what have you been doing? He's like, yeah, all of this stuff. I'm like, dude. Once he stopped doing that, and actually warmed up before doing that, it helped as well. So being in that position of knowing what the style is and knowing the anatomy, it does really help.
Yeah. And I imagine that stays with you. So even in your new degree, when they're going through anatomy, you're probably checking things off that you already know.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's fun being able to integrate, your hobby with your knowledge and etc. as well.
And so would you have any sort of, if there are any sort of either students or new grads more so listening into this, would you have any advice on what, they should look for, what they should do, anything? Really?
Okay. Yes. So general advice is, well, times have changed. So my advice might not be as applicable to you right now as it was for me like 3-4 years ago. But I would say just be okay with yourself. That will just help, prevent anxiety building so much, right? When you are looking for a place, you have to think about many factors, right? Do you like the people so far in your place? Because as you know, the people around the workplace is so important to you, right? Even though you're autonomous practitioner, it does matter. In terms of the pay, is it employed, self-employed? What's the percentage split? And are you happy with that? So you have to calculate what they're charging as well. So then you can calculate your own split. You need to also ask them, how am I getting my patients? Do I have to start from scratch and build it? Or are you helping me? Really important question, right? Because if you are just starting from scratch from the get-go, it can be quite challenging to, build it up gradually. Again, I'm gonna refer to Beth, like what she did, right? She went employed first because of that stability. Yeah. So I'll say, yeah, I could recommend that. Because it will just help build you up as well. And when you have free time, one of the most important skills I would say is to know how to build a business. I mean, how to attract new clients and retain them, all right? Because those are essentially the markers any clinical director will use based on your performance, unfortunately, right? It might not even be if the patient got better or not. It's just how many times they're coming in, or, how much do they paid essentially, which sucks. But yeah, it's all down to you guys. Just as long as you are happy and it feels right with that certain clinic, go for it. There's so many opportunities. I found my jobs through the Institute of Osteopathy, their little job search, or indeed.co.uk. That was really valuable for me. Yeah. Anything else? Any advice? I don't think so.
No, really good points there. And I think a lot of it, some of them they might know and some of it, will be new. So it's always good to share. And that's the whole point of the series, is to share information and learn from each other and learn from, the stuff that we do well, learn from the stuff that we don't do well and the mistakes that we make. But ultimately, I think if we do this, we all rise as a profession together, even if you're no longer in the profession. I mean, God knows where I'm going to be in 5 years.
Right, that's the thing. Yeah, I'm sure you'll do well, man.
Yeah,
you're on a trajectory for greatness.
Thanks. Well, you too. And I can't wait to have you back and talk more about radiography once you've done a bit more into it. And maybe you can even help and lecture us. Who knows?
Right, you never know. Actually, I think that'll be a really interesting experience coming back.
How full circle would it be if you came back to teach radiography at Beacon?
Wow, that would be awesome. How are you finding it teaching? Is it weird? Is it exciting?
I love it. I really enjoy it. Like, I remember, how we're in fourth year and we can go back to dissection. And so I did that the whole year. Writing a dissertation was not the best idea, but I really genuinely in love going back and teaching, because it also made you relearn stuff that you had forgotten.
Yes, absolutely.
And so that whole process of just like rethinking, relearning, and then it's, you can't teach it unless you know it.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's really good. I'm glad you're enjoying it. And it's all about giving back, isn't it? And we learn so much from giving back as well.
Exactly. And it's when, somebody who's listening to you finally gets it or connects, two things together, you think, okay, that's my job done. That's what I wanted. Now go forth and pass it on to somebody else and pay it forward, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But I just want to thank you so much, for coming on and spending your time and giving us another perspective that some people might not be exposed to. And I think that's what's really valuable and important about your story. So thank you for that.
Thank you for having me, Sylvan. It's been a pleasure talking to you. And I'm glad I could share my story, because I don't think I would probably share it otherwise.
Yeah.
Great.
So and we'll see you back as a radiographer. That's going to be even more exciting.
Yes, sir. You will do.
Thanks.